The city of New York shimmered under a pale winter sun, the air heavy with the scent of roasted chestnuts and gasoline. Amid the noise of honking taxis and hurried footsteps, a small figure moved quietly along the crowded sidewalks, a boy no older than 12, wearing a torn hoodie and shoes that had seen too many seasons. His name was Eli Turner. Eli carried a small cardboard box that held his world, a handful of handmade cards cut from recycled cereal boxes, each covered with uneven handwriting and colored pencil drawings. On every card he wrote a quote of hope, something that had helped him survive another day on the cold streets. "Hope is free," he would whisper to himself every morning. But sometimes people forget they have it. He would sell the cards for $1 each, not because he wanted to be rich, but because the people he met needed hope more than he needed money. Eli's mother, Mary Ann, had passed away 2 years earlier. She used to tell him bedtime stories about the light that never dies, the kind of light that lived inside good people. After her death, his father disappeared into the unknown, leaving Eli to navigate the city alone. For weeks, he slept in shelters or on park benches, clutching his mother's old notebook filled with quotes she had loved. One night, hungry and shivering near a subway entrance, Eli tore a page from that notebook and copied one quote onto a scrap of cardboard. "Even in darkness, one small light can guide you home." He drew a tiny candle beneath the words and set on the ground beside an old coffee cup. The next morning, a woman in a gray coat stopped to read it, her eyes filled with tears. She dropped a $5 bill into his cup and whispered, "Thank you. I needed that." That moment changed everything. From then on, Eli began writing more quotes, messages about courage, kindness, and dreams, and soon people started looking for him. Some bought his cards. Others simply stopped to talk. The boy who had once gone unnoticed became a small yet glowing presence on the same corner of Fifth Avenue, near a bakery that smelled like heaven. The bakery owner, Mrs. Ruth Parker, often gave Eli leftover muffins. One morning, she stepped outside holding a steaming cup of cocoa. "Eli," she said gently, "you're doing something special. People smile when they see you. That's rare in the city." Eli smiled shyly, warming his hands on the cup. "I just write what my mom used to say. She said words can heal people." Ruth nodded, her eyes soft. "Maybe you're right. Keep writing, kid. The world could use more healing." A stranger's gift. One chilly afternoon, while Eli was arranging his cards, a tall man in a dark suit stopped beside him. His name was Daniel Reeves, a journalist who had just lost his job and felt like his dreams had crumbled. He picked up one of Eli's cards that read, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become." Something stirred inside Daniel. He crouched beside the boy. "Did you write this yourself?" he asked. Eli nodded. "Mostly. Some I find in my mom's notebook, some I make up." Daniel smiled faintly. "How much?" $1, sir." Daniel paid him 10. "Keep the change," he said, slipping the card into his coat pocket. That night, Daniel wrote an article titled "The Boy Who Sold Hope" and published it on his small online blog. He didn't expect much, maybe a few dozen views. But the story touched thousands of hearts within days. People began to search for Eli Turner, the little street boy who reminded them what hope looked like. One chilly afternoon, while Eli was arranging his cards, a tall man in a dark suit stopped beside him. His name was Daniel Reeves, a journalist who had just lost his job and felt like his dreams had crumbled. He picked up one of Eli's cards that read, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become." Something stirred inside Daniel. He crouched beside the boy. "Did you write this yourself?" he asked. Eli nodded. "Mostly. Some I find in my mom's notebook, some I make up." Daniel smiled faintly. "How much?" $1, sir." Daniel paid him 10. "Keep the change," he said, slipping the card into his coat pocket. That night, Daniel wrote an article titled "The Boy Who Sold Hope" and published it on his small online blog. He didn't expect much, maybe a few dozen views. But the story touched thousands of hearts within days. People began to search for Eli Turner, the little street boy who reminded them what hope looked like. Snow began to fall over New York City, blanketing the streets with a soft silence. But even in the coldest mornings, Eli Turner stood at his corner near Ruth Parker's bakery, his box of handmade cards resting on a crate. His fingers were red and raw, yet he never stopped writing. Each day, the people passing by seemed different, not just strangers anymore, but faces that smiled, nodded, or waved. A police officer bought a card for his daughter. A tired nurse from the nearby hospital bought one every week. A homeless veteran once handed Eli his only coin and said, "You've given me something more valuable than money, kid." Eli didn't understand how big his small words had become. A few days after the journalist Daniel Reeves published the article, something unexpected happened. A woman from a local radio station approached Eli. Her name was Samantha Cole, and her station had read Daniel's story on air. "You're Eli, right?" she asked warmly, kneeling down so her eyes met his. Eli nodded, confused but smiling. "Yes, ma'am. I'd like to talk to you on the radio," she said. "Your story has touched a lot of people. Would you like to share your message?" Eli blinked, unsure what to say. No one had ever asked for his message before. He only wrote because it made him feel close to his mother again. After a pause, he whispered, "I don't really know what to say, except maybe people forget how strong they are. I just want to remind them." Samantha smiled. "That's perfect." The next morning, Eli's soft, nervous voice filled the airwaves across New York. He spoke about losing his parents, about the nights he felt invisible, and how one kind smile from a stranger could make you believe in tomorrow. When the show ended, the radio station's phone lines flooded with messages. People wanted to donate help or simply meet the boy who had reminded them that hope still existed. Within weeks, Eli's corner became a gathering place. Ruth, the bakery owner, decided to help in her own way. She cleared out a small corner inside her shop, placed a wooden table and a sign that read, "Hope Corner. Meet Eli Turner and get your car to light." Now, Eli could stay warm while writing. Customers who came for coffee would often sit with him, talking about their lives while he listened quietly and wrote a card just for them. A man once came in with tears in his eyes and said, "My wife left me. I lost everything. What can I do?" Eli thought for a long moment and wrote, "Sometimes life takes away what you don't need, so you can find who you are." The man read the card slowly, then smiled for the first time in weeks. He hugged Eli and said, "Thank you, son. You're saving lives with cardboard and crayons." Eli laughed shyly. "No, sir, I'm just writing what my mom used to say." One evening, Daniel Reeves returned to see Eli. He was now working for a bigger magazine, the same one that had rejected him months ago. But he didn't come as a journalist this time. He brought a framed copy of the article, "The Boy Who Sold Hope," and placed it on the bakery wall. "You changed my life, Eli," Daniel said softly. "I was lost. Writing about you reminded me why I became a writer in the first place." Eli smiled, holding his cup of cocoa. "Then maybe hope works both ways." Daniel chuckled. "Yeah, maybe it does." Soon, people began sending letters to the bakery from other states, even other countries. They wrote about how Eli's story had given them courage to face illness, loss, or fear. A teacher from Chicago started a classroom project called Hope Cards, where students made their own inspirational messages for others. A hospital in Boston began giving out Eli-style cards to patients. A social media campaign appeared. #SoldHope. Thousands of people sharing photos of the little boy's quotes. Eli didn't even own a phone or a computer, but his words were now traveling across the world. And yet, nothing changed for him personally. He still lived in a small shelter, still wore the same jacket, and still thanked Ruth every night before leaving. He didn't want fame. He only wanted people to remember that even the smallest person could make a difference. Spring came slowly to New York City. The snow melted into streams that glistened under the sun, and the streets buzzed with life again. But among all that noise and rush, people still paused at the small bakery on Fifth Avenue. Inside, near the window, Eli Turner sat at his wooden table, writing hope into pieces of cardboard. He had become more than a boy on the street. He had become a symbol, News channels called him the little philosopher of Fifth Avenue. Schools invited him to visit, but Eli always refused politely. "I'm not a hero," he'd say. "I'm just a kid with crayons." Still, the bakery was full every day. People came from faraway towns just to meet him. Ruth Parker, the bakery owner, would smile proudly as she served cookies and cocoa. She often said, "I used to sell bread for a living. Now I sell hope, thanks to Eli." One sunny afternoon, as the smell of cinnamon filled the air, a man in an expensive suit entered the bakery. He wasn't there for pastries. His sharp eyes scanned the room until they found Eli. "Are you Eli Turner?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," Eli said, looking up from his notebook. "My name's Mr. Gray. I'm from a publishing company. We've seen your story everywhere. People love what you write. We want to publish a book of your quotes. Hope in small hands. What do you think?" Eli's eyes widened. "A book?" "Yes, we'll take care of everything. You'd earn money, of course. Enough to live a better life." For a moment, Eli didn't know how to respond. He looked around the bakery, at the smiles, the warmth, the little corner that had become his world. Then he shook his head gently. "Sir, I'm very grateful, but I think Hope should stay free." Mr. Gray blinked, surprised. "Free?" "Yes," Eli said quietly. "If I sell in a book, maybe some people won't read it. And maybe the people who need it most don't have the money to buy it." The man frowned, clearly in use or rejection, but there was something in Eli's voice that made him pause. He nodded slowly. "You're a wise kid, Eli. I hope the world learns from you." Weeks turned into months. The crowds kept coming, and Eli kept writing. But behind his gentle smile, something was wrong. He was growing weaker. The cold nights, poor food, and long hours were taking a toll on his small body. Ruth noticed at first. The cough that wouldn't go away. The way he'd rub his chest and whisper that he just needed rest. "Eli, honey," she said one morning, "you should see a doctor. I'll pay." But Eli shook his head. "I'm okay, Mrs. Parker. People are waiting for their cards." Still, she insisted. When the doctor came, the news was worrying: pneumonia, made worse by malnutrition. Eli was admitted to a hospital, and the city that had grown used to seeing him suddenly felt emptier. Outside the bakery, Ruth hung a sign that read, "Eli is resting. Keep believing in hope." While Eli lay in his hospital bed, hundreds of letters poured in. Nurses carried boxes of them. Cards, drawings, little notes from children and strangers across the country. Some came from soldiers overseas, others from teachers, artists, and even celebrities. One letter, written in a child's scrawl, said, "Dear Eli, when I feel sad, I read your quotes. You make me feel brave. Get well soon so you can keep giving hope." Eli smiled weakly as he read them. For the first time, he realized just how many people he had touched. Samantha, the radio host, came to visit. She held his hand and whispered, "Eli, your story has reached millions. You've done something no adult could do." Eli's voice was faint, but steady. "I didn't do it alone. They believed again. That's what made it happen." Daniel Reeves, the journalist who first wrote about him, visited too. He brought a camera crew. "Eli," he said softly, "people want to hear from you again. Would you say something to them?" Eli nodded. The camera light blinked on. He looked straight into the lens, his small face pale, but bright with warmth. "Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you for believing in me. My mom used to tell me that hope isn't something you keep. It's something you give. So if you ever feel sad, give hope to someone else. You'll see it always comes back." That short clip went viral. Millions watched, cried, and shared it. It became known as the message from a boy who sold hope. The morning sun touched the tall hospital windows, spilling light across the pale blue room where Eli Turner lay resting. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, but his small notebook sat open on his lap. His hands trembled as he wrote a few final words in pencil. "If one light fades, another must shine. Hope doesn't end, it moves." He smiled faintly. He wasn't afraid of what would come next. He believed that his mother's words were true. The light never dies. It only passes on. Outside his room, nurses whispered softly, and in the hallway, Ruth Parker stood holding a bag of warm muffins. Her eyes were red from crying. Daniel Reeves and Samantha Cole were there too, silent, watching through the glass window. Eli looked up, saw them, and waved weakly. He pressed a notebook to his chest, whispering something no one could hear. That night, as the city lights flickered in the distance, Eli Turner's heart fell quiet. He was 12 years old. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. The boy who sold hope has passed away. Those were the headlines across newspapers, radio, and television. People stopped in the streets. Offices went silent. Schools held moments of prayer. In the bakery, Ruth placed Eli's empty chair by the window and laid one of his handwritten cards on the table. It read, "The smallest candle can still chase away the darkest night." Customers came in quietly, leaving flowers, drawings, and their own handwritten quotes beside it. Within hours, the table was covered, a mountain of love and memory. Daniel Reeves wrote a final article. Eli Turner taught us what the richest and strongest men sometimes forget, that words, when spoken with love, can rebuild a broken world. Samantha's radio station replayed his last message every hour that week. Millions listened, many in tears, hearing again that small voice say, "If you ever feel sad, give hope to someone else." Weeks passed and months, but Eli's message refused to fade. Instead, it grew. A teacher in California started an organization called Eli's Cards, encouraging children to write messages of hope to people in hospitals. Within a year, it had spread to 20 countries. In Japan, students left handmade hope cards on train seats. In Brazil, volunteers gave out Eli's quotes in shelters. In Kenya, a group of children painted a mural of him holding a candle beneath the words, "One light can guide 1,000. The boy who had once been invisible on the streets of New York had become a symbol of compassion for the entire world. Ruth's promise. Ruth Parker, now much older, kept the bakery running. But she changed its name. The sign outside no longer read Parker's Bakery. It said, Eli's Corner, where hope is always free. Every year on December 14th, the day Eli first sold his card, people gathered there. They didn't come for pastries. They came to sit by his old wooden table, to write their own messages, to give or receive a card of hope. And Ruth would always tell new visitors, he didn't just sell hope, he planted it. In me, in you, in everyone. Sometimes, when the bakery was quiet at night, she swore she could hear a boy's voice, soft, warm, full of life, whispering, "Keep the light alive." Ruth Parker, now much older, kept the bakery running, but she changed its name. The sign outside no longer read Parker's Bakery. It said, Eli's Corner, where hope is always free. Every year on December 14th, the day Eli first sold his card, people gathered there. They didn't come for pastries. They came to sit by his old wooden table, to write their own messages, to give or receive a card of hope. And Ruth would always tell new visitors, he didn't just sell hope, he planted it. In me, in you, in everyone. Sometimes, when the bakery was quiet at night, she swore she could hear a boy's voice, soft, warm, full of life, whispering, "Keep the light alive." 10 years later, the world celebrated what would have been Eli's 22nd birthday. A bronze statue was unveiled in Central Park, a small boy sitting cross-legged with a notebook in his hands, a smile carved into his face, and a candle glowing beside him. At the base of the statue were his final words, engraved in shining letters. If one light fades, another must shine. Hope doesn't end, it moves. Thousands gathered that day. Reporters, teachers, children, and strangers from across the world. Ruth, now in her 70s, stood before the crowd and said softly, Eli didn't live long, but he lived enough to remind us that kindness never dies. He showed us that hope can be written on a piece of cardboard and still reach the stars. The crowd applauded, but many were crying. A little girl stepped forward, holding a small handmade card. She placed it beneath the statue. It said, "Thank you, Eli. I'm carrying your light now." As she walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden beam over the statue. as if the boy who sold hope was smiling once again. In a quiet part of New York, beside the old bakery that still smelled of cinnamon and dreams, a candle burns every night. No one knows who lights it. Some say it's Ruth. Others think it's just the wind catching an old spark. But the flame never goes out. And sometimes, when someone lonely or broken passes by, they find a small card taped to the window. Written in simple handwriting, it says, "Hope is not something you wait for. It's something you give." No signature, just light,